Disney News Talk Live with a special edition here on November the 20th, 2022, a historic day in any respect. Ladies and gentlemen, multiple sources now reporting this is not a joke. Check yourself, because I am as blown away as you are. Something that we never thought could happen has happened. Bob Iger is returning as Disney CEO, effective immediately. And our boy, Bob Chapek, certainly somebody who has been run through the mud, and many say it's fair. He's a guy that absolutely has become a punchline. He has become a very unfortunate leader. He has become a joke in the business community because of his inability to be engaging and respectful. And this is kind of in every aspect here, in every aspect of business. This is a true shock to the Disney system, a true shock to the biggest media company in the world. No doubt there will be gigantic ramifications from this sudden twist, this ouster of Bob Chapek. This is a very seismic moment within the Disney company, not since the removal of Disney CEO Michael Eisner to make way for Bob Iger Has there been a seismic event like this within the Disney company that has shook it to its core, that has made it an absolutely insane place to be? Right? Michael Eisner, in the final few years of his tenure, many say he lost his mind. Things got very intense, very dark, and the creative aspect of the organization was completely ripped out of the company due to cost cutting and due to all kinds of attempts to curb the losses that were happening at the time, and everything that sort of made Michael Eisner and everything that put him on the top of the mountain. Well, those were gone by the end of his tenure. And unfortunately, in a very Shakespearean type moment, Michael Eisner was chucked out by the board of directors. Certainly was one of those individuals that was looked at by the board of directors. And Roy Disney, the nephew at the time, who had been working for Disney, had been a part of the board, left the board to lead a shareholder revolt, which was very unpopular. Of course, the board of directors very unhappy with the optics of that, and Michael Eisner made his departure. With that in mind, in comes our friend Bob Iger, right? Who was Eisner's top lieutenant at the time. Many people don't realize that, Iger, to a certain degree, was looked at as some sort of top lieutenant and a very sort of trusted advisor to Eisner. However, those two did not get along in the slightest. Those two were not at all connected in any sort of friendly way. It was strictly business, and that was it. In fact, when Michael Eisner moved on, Bob Iger sort of removed every reference to him, took down his photos, made sure that everything was scrubbed that said Eisner. He removed a majority of the Eisner brain trust within the organization. And now, as Bob Chapek has been removed as Disney CEO, Bob Iger is picked to come back and take the reins of a company that is going through a very tumultuous time, no doubt. And hi, everybody. It's Wade for the Kingdom Report. I know I didn't introduce myself. We just jumped right into it, didn't we? Folks, this is a big, big moment in Disney history because the Disney Board of Directors, who just extended Bob Chapek's own contract out for another few years, right? It was a vote of confidence that this guy was going to take care of everything. He's the man, right? He's on track. We have every faith, every belief that Bob Chapek is going to make this Disney company the best it can possibly be, and we are rallying behind him. Susan Arnold, the chairperson of the Walt Disney Company, even said as much, that we are so excited to extend Bob Chapek's contract. And look at this. Just a few months later, Bob Chapek is out as Disney CEO, being replaced by Bob Iger once again, a guy we never thought was going to come back to the Walt Disney Company. Let's dive in here. Deadline is reporting that after less than a year in retirement, Bob Iger has returned as the CEO of the Walt Disney Company. The board just sent out a notice that Bob I is back. And recently re-upped Bob Chapek is out. Handing over the baton as CEO in February 2020 to Chapek and serving as executive chairman until the end of 2021, Iger will serve as CEO for a second time for the next 2 years. Previously, Iger was top dog at the House of Mouse from 2005 for 15 years. Quote, the board has concluded that as Disney embarks on an increasingly complex period of industry transformation, Bob Iger is uniquely situated to lead the company through this pivotal period, said board chair Susan Arnold today after what was a rougher than expected last quarter for the company. Let's keep in mind here that the real shocker came when the Walt Disney Company sort of came out with the news that things were far worse than anyone realized. And the shareholders were taken by surprise. There wasn't any sort of warning. There wasn't any sort of heads up. Usually, the Disney company warns or gets people prepared for less than stellar results when and if it happens. It did not occur this time around. So, no doubt this upset an awful lot of shareholders. This upset an awful lot of individuals that are invested well into the Disney organization. And Disney announced today that Robert A. Iger is returning to lead Disney as Chief Executive Officer, effective immediately. Mr. Iger, who spent more than 4 decades at the company, including 15 years as its CEO, has agreed to serve as Disney's CEO for 2 years with a mandate from the board to set the strategic direction for renewed growth and to work closely with the board in developing a successor to lead the company at the completion of his term. Mr. Iger succeeds Bob Chapek, who has stepped down from his position. Quote, "We thank Bob Chapek for his service to Disney over his long career, including navigating the company through unprecedented challenges." That's their word. Unprecedented. Of course, they're referencing the pandemic when they say that, and that is unprecedented. However, no doubt they are trying to use that to mask the tumultuous time that Disney has had. And while it made certainly an impact, I don't want to make it seem like the pandemic did not make an impact on the company. The over-the-top cost-cutting, the cannibalizing of the creative within the organization has been felt, and morale is at an all-time low. We have covered it here for you in prior broadcasts on this channel all over the place. We have covered for you exactly how people are feeling and the tone and tenor, not just of the employees that work for the magic place known as the Walt Disney Company, right? The most magical company on earth. But also, the consumers are pretty fed up, especially Disney Parks fans. We hear that from you all the time. We get it. The quote continues. Susan Arnold, chairman of the board, adds that the board has concluded that as Disney embarks on an increasingly complex period of industry transformation, Bob Iger is uniquely situated to lead the company through this pivotal period. Mr. Iger has the deep respect of Disney's senior leadership team, most of whom he worked closely with until his departure as executive chairman 11 months ago. Boy, isn't that crazy to think? I mean, it feels like an eternity since he's been gone. It's only been 11 months, not even a full year. And Bob Iger is back. She continues by saying, and he is greatly admired by Disney employees worldwide, all of which will allow for a seamless transition of leadership. The position of chairman of the board remains unchanged, with Ms. Arnold serving in that capacity. Quote, I am extremely optimistic for the future of this great company and thrilled to be asked by the board to return as CEO. Bob Iger is thrilled to be returning as CEO after he's tried to exit, 3-4 times in the last 10 years? I don't know if I necessarily believe that Iger is thrilled to be coming back in any sort of sense of the word. He is a guy that did everything he could to prep and ready individuals that the board kept passing on. And somehow, some way, they landed on Chapek in the end. Just wild. At any rate, Iger saying, he's so optimistic, right? I mean, and this is who he is, right? He's a soft-spoken, optimistic, upbeat guy. This is why fans tend to love him, even though he has no doubt spent the company into oblivion with billions of dollars in acquisitions that they are still paying. A lot of folks don't realize that, and no doubt that also was a part of Bob Chapek's realignment that he had to make as he took on the role of CEO. He had to become somebody that also picked up the debt and had to figure out how to pay it off. Unfortunately, Chapek, I think, went about it all the wrong ways, and that led to just tremendous amounts of frustration and anger from Disney consumers, and then, of course, the employees across the board. Iger continued by saying, Disney and its comparable brands and franchises hold a special place at the hearts of so many people around the globe, most especially in the hearts of our employees, whose dedication to this company and its mission is an inspiration. I am deeply honored to be asked to again lead this remarkable team with a clear vision, a clear mission focused on creative excellence to inspire generations through unrivaled, bold storytelling. Close quote. So he immediately touches on one of the massive problems that Disney is going through at the moment, and that is the creative cannibalization of the company. Creatives across the board within the Disney organization have fled. And if they haven't fled, they've either been fired, laid off, wiped aside. It is being felt now in the consumer products division, the Disney Parks division, the experiences division. A lot of areas within the organization that are considered probably the most popular of the company, they are in fact now seeking more so operational individuals, right? Operational leaders, operational individuals, strategic planning people to run creative ends of the business than they are looking to the imagination that helped build the company in the first place. Don't think for a second that folks like Joe Rohde, famed Imagineer who brought us Disney's Animal Kingdom and so many incredible attractions over the course of time, don't think for a second that his departure was because he wanted to go. He loved it at Disney. In fact, he left Disney and immediately went to work for, I believe, Virgin Galactic, where Michael Kohlglazer, the former president of Disneyland, and then also overseeing various ends of the Asian parks, he left and became CEO of Virgin Galactic. So folks were jumping ship, and the creative end of the company has been battered, bruised, and left to die by Bob Chapek. Because for some reason, Bob Chapek, I don't know if he just doesn't get the creative end. The guy's been with the company a long time, but that never seemed his forte. That never seemed like something that interested him to begin with. And no doubt, that played into the decisions of strategic alignment and removing a lot of creative heads, a lot of leaders across the organization from those creative posts. That mixed with all the price hikes, all of the things that come along with cost cutting, making the experience far less magical than we are used to. Across the board, film franchises have suffered. We always talk about Disney parks here. That experience has suffered. Consumer products have suffered. Disney Plus going through a tumultuous time too, when it was at one point the only thing that was getting the company through the pandemic. The only real highlight of the pandemic era was Disney Plus, and now things aren't looking too hot on the Disney Plus front. During his 15 years as CEO from 2005 to 2020, Bob Iger helped build Disney into one of the world's most successful and admired media and entertainment companies with a strategic vision focused on creative excellence, technological innovation, and international growth. He expanded on Disney's legacy of unparalleled storytelling with the acquisitions of Pixar, Marvel, Lucasfilm, 21st Century Fox, and increased the company's market capitalization fivefold during his time as CEO. Mr. Iger continued to direct Disney's creative endeavors until his departure as executive chairman last December. The company's robust pipeline of content is a testament to his leadership and vision. Well, there you have it. I still in shock, still surprised, and definitely we will remember the day, won't we, when Bob Iger came back. I've heard some people categorizing it as maybe, I don't know, Christmas come early. I've seen that. I have seen folks say this is the worst thing that could happen due to the fact that Bob Iger got the company into so much debt in the first place, which led to Bob Chapek having to deal with it after Iger walked out the door. And then, of course, Iger set him up to fail, is the argument I often hear. Depends on what side of the aisle you stand on. Looks like Bob Chapek is in our chat. In fact, he's saying, what is this BS? Yeah, he's he's not happy, that's for sure. And he declares this is war. So, well, Bob, out you go. It was fun. And I got to say, the beard was a nice touch. Really. It made you so much warmer. Lucy says, hi, Wade, any chance he'll be able to turn the magic back on? Well, certainly that's what the board thinks, Lucy, is that Bob Iger returning in capacity as CEO, which of course is the major news that we are talking about here tonight. This is just wild that this drops on a Sunday. This tells you that this was a desperation move, that's for sure. A Sunday night, this news breaks. An email goes out to cast members company-wide that Bob Iger is returning to his role as CEO. And Lucy, the board certainly thinks that Iger has the Midas touch and that he will help sort of correct and steer things again. He's got 2 years to figure it out. He's got 2 years to turn it all around, at least the things that we are feeling as negatives, the things that we are feeling certainly as, we'll say, creative withdrawals. We are feeling we need more deposits, not so many withdrawals, that's for sure. We are looking for the magic once again, Lucy, and I think that the board believes that Bob Iger is going to bring that. Michael saying the stock dropping 41% and at an all-time 52-week low is probably what put the final nail in Chapek's tenure. Michael, as mentioned, they did not prepare shareholders for the very unfortunate and unsettling and dark news of exactly how they've missed the mark this time around. And no doubt that was a shock to the system of investors, and the stock in general has not been doing as hot, certainly under Chapek's tenure. Gizen says, yay, let's hope he cuts the work crap. Don't know what work crap is. Sam saying, what a day. Sam, couldn't agree more. It's quite a day, that's for sure. And Quentin saying, I wonder how much this firing has to do with recent news of layoffs and a hiring freeze. And Quentin, that's a great point, because the layoffs that are no doubt going into effect, the hiring freeze that are that is occurring across the organization, hiring freeze has no doubt put a ton of investors on edge, and many of the shareholders giving them quite a bit of pause, freaking out, if you will, because wait a minute, what's this? This doesn't look like there's confidence in the future, especially as this was a move to try and navigate the very uncertain times ahead, right? Navigate the very dark period that Chapek has been experiencing recently, especially with all of the losses. A hiring freeze across the board, and the strategic group that Chapek was bringing together along with the CFO and I believe another individual or two from the organization that was going to specifically focus on strategic elements that were either going to be removed and tough decisions that were going to be made, which tells me they were about to make huge layoff announcements. That was at least the rumors within the company that I continued to hear, was that everybody was bracing for massive layoffs across the board and that they were going to be impacted in every division. So I think, yes, Quentin, that news and that those stories coming out are absolutely playing into this sort of red alert decision of, my God, we have to get somebody back in here that can figure this out, because it has not been a cakewalk for Bob Chapek at all. And yes, he gets a lot of criticism, much of it he deserves. However, this was never going to be easy for him. He was universally disliked on the way in as Parks chairman when he took the role of CEO. So this news, I think, just couples with the rest of the massive snowball that was already hurling towards him. I just don't know. I don't understand why they renewed the contract for the guy a couple months ago and said they had full confidence if this is what happened a few months later. And perhaps it was them reaching out to Bob Iger, in the background and trying to get him on board once again to return. We'll never know what was happening at the board level. Unbelievable. P.S. saying, I guess Disney is in big trouble. This looks like an act of desperation. And that's exactly what I was thinking, P.S. is, boy, this seems desperate, huh? To suddenly throw up a Hail Mary and bring back the last guy who tried exiting multiple times, who did everything he could, right, to give them an heir to the throne. They settled on Chapek, and all he wanted was to retire. All he wanted was to move on. They must be offering him a heck of a lot to come back. That's for sure. Laura Jean saying, I'm glad Bob Chapek is fired. Are you? I think a lot of folks are. Douglas coming in saying, yes, woohoo! Stacy saying, I still vote for Tyler. Of course, Tyler Crouch here on the Kingdom Report channel, saying, I guess he will do for the time being. LOL. Well, thank you for that, Stacy. Hey, there's 2 years, Stacy, before Bob Iger needs to find a replacement, needs to present a replacement. Hey, you never know. That's for sure. We might be in luck. DDC saying, maybe he'll finally bring Disney back to Walt's way. As Walt said, give the guest more than they expect, and the money will take care of itself. DDC, I certainly hope so. We are in a very damning time, especially when we reference Disney parks. It is so expensive now. It is so uncomfortable to visit a Disney park because of all of the upcharges, because of the massive expense. And it's never been cheap. I know that. However, there always seemed to be at least an element of exceeding guest expectations under Iger for the longest time. That existed for most of his tenure. Exceeding expectations was something that I still felt everywhere. In the last year and a half, I have not felt that at all. I think about all of the really unfortunate decisions that have been made over the last year and a half, and I get it. Again, I go back to this idea that the pandemic definitely impacted this company as well as everybody else. We get that. However, even Tyler Crouch here on the Kingdom Report has made, I think, the reference multiple times that they continue to use that as an excuse, when in reality, they're basically back up to full capacity. They're doing everything sort of the same way that they used to in terms of consumer demand. However, they are cutting consumers off at the knees when it comes to delivering on the promises that they did in 2019. And now, it's like those promises don't exist anymore. Exceeding expectations isn't really something that Disney's excited about. It's not something that they're interested in. Anna saying, Iger is not perfect either, but is preferable to Chapek. Yeah, I'll take Iger any day. Like I've outlined here, he got the company into a lot of debt and a lot of trouble as well. but he at least is a sincere, respectable, decent, soft-spoken face that knows how to navigate people and relationships, whereas Bob Chapek has not had that at all. Bob Chapek, I can go down the list if you want me to. Bob Chapek has had a tremendous amount of headbutting between himself and the rest of the organization heads, employees, stars, Scarlett Johansson, anyone. He has really not managed relationships well, and I think ultimately that is his downfall. In the end, relationship management killed him, because that guy is not personable in the least. There is no sense of respect for others, and you can tell it every time you hear him speak. There is a tremendous facade that this guy puts up, and unfortunately, the heart that Bob Iger often presents, that feels very sincere, and I believe is not something that Chapek ever had to begin with. He is an operator. He is a strategic planner. He is somebody that sees only the bottom line and just does not understand how this company affects people. He puts it out in statements, right? He puts it out in talking points because that's what the PR people tell him to do. I don't think for 1 second, and I've never felt it with him, in any presentation, in any moment where he has been speaking to people, that he believes Disney is a special place that connects to folks. He sees dollar signs, he sees the ability to make more money, and I know we want a CEO that can do that, right? We want a return on investment, sure. But if you are lacking a heart, and you don't understand the emotional connection of your brand, and he'd been in it for decades, right? He'd been around forever. And yet he still was unable to connect those dots. Relationship management and his inability to understand the emotional connection to the consumer was his downfall. At least in my opinion. Judy saying, I am doing such a happy dance. He made it miserable. Oh, Judy. Yeah, a lot of people disliked Chapek. This news, of course, rocking the world. And yes, we have somebody saying, no way that's Chapek. Yes, Bob Chapek is not in our chat. No, he's not. Sam said, I heard a rumor, rather, that Josh D'Amaro will come a few years after Iger. Sam, I've heard this rumor repeatedly, that Josh has been primed, prepped, and prepared to take over as CEO eventually. Usually the person that goes through the park's position as chairman will then become CEO, or at least presented to become CEO to the board. I think, Josh, again, that emotional connection, he gets it. He understands what's important, right? He understands the connection people have to the brand, probably better than any parks chairman I've seen since Tom Staggs. Tom Staggs did a tremendous job. He was presented, Tom Staggs was, as CEO, heir apparent, and the board passed on him. Bob Iger was like, no, I want to retire. This guy's great. And they passed on him. So, once the board passes on you, why are you going to stick around? He left after that. Huge loss. But Josh D'Amaro, definitely, I think, the face that Disney... he's kind of the only thing that makes fans happy right now. He's kind of the only executive that really makes individuals and consumers smile. And, no doubt, I also want to make clear, Josh, as chairman of parks, during this time, we've seen a tremendous decline in the experience. And I never give Josh a pass in this because he's the chairman. And I get it. If the CEO is telling you to do something, you're not going to really disagree. However, as chairman, Josh is standing by and either letting it happen, or he is instrumental in many of these decisions that are leading to parks fans, especially the most boisterous among us, be very vocally angry. Right? He is certainly a huge part of what we are feeling in terms of the magic disconnect on the back end. But I've seen it referenced before, right? He's an attractive guy. He's got his skinny jeans, and he knows how to, touch that heart. He shakes hands. He makes employees feel good. And everybody gives him a pass. So, it's always something that I like to make mention of. Jennifer saying, at least Iger understands the value of cast members. They are the magic. Plus, maybe he'll remember Walt's dream was to create a magical place for all families, where all families are welcome, not just the rich ones. Jennifer, yes, I certainly hope that we will find a opportunity in this to restore the magic, to restore the issues that we all care about, right? The aspects of the organization, the aspects of the parks, the things that we know to help create that magic, that we have loved, that have been sort of trimmed and removed during this process. Hopefully Iger will see that and bring it back. Siobhan saying, oh my God, y'all. Hey. Oh my God, indeed. Tyler saying, Daddy Iger for the win. Tyler, congratulations. Comment of the day. Daddy Iger for the win. That's right. Bob Chapek saying, my wife wants a divorce. Well, I thought you grew that beard for her, Bob. Isn't that what you said in an interview? I thought that's what you said. And Quentin saying, with the 100 coming up, I really hope we move towards Walt's vision. I agree. This Disney 100 celebration is such a moment in time. This Disney 100 could be dripping in nostalgia. However, they seem to be missing the point once again when I think about Walt Disney World's 50th anniversary. That should have been dripping in nostalgia and hasn't been the whole time, right? A lot of people didn't even realize when visiting Disney World in the last year that there was a celebration going on. They kind of failed to celebrate the most magical place on earth. Disney 100, which seems to be really centered at Disneyland, hopefully will be elevated and will receive all of the TLC and all of the affection and love that it deserves. That's for sure. I want that to happen for Disney 100. Traction Faction saying, I know a lot of folks wanted me voted in as CEO. Of course, this is Tyler Crouch, but I'm willing to withdraw with Daddy Iger back on board. All right. Tyler, ready to withdraw. And Jerry saying, so happy about this great news. Disney Grandma saying, bring the magic back and I will come to Disney and take someone again who cannot afford to go. Love this move. Disney Grandma, it is nice to have somebody we can believe in again as CEO, and hopefully he will indeed right the ship. That's for sure. I want to read to you another reference point here of what is happening right now as, again, Disney CEO Bob Iger returning, effective immediately to the Walt Disney Company to help lead the way. Bob Chapek removed as CEO. CNBC reporting that Bob Iger is back. Disney reappointed Iger as CEO on Sunday night, effective immediately after previous CEO Bob Chapek came under fire for his management of the entertainment giant. Chapek was named chief executive in February 2020, succeeding Iger, who had previously said he wouldn't return to the role. Yeah, you remember that? Everybody remember Iger saying, yeah, no, I'm done, I'm retired, I'm gone. You know, this is now in my rearview mirror. I was at Disney forever. Nothing's bringing me back. Shares of Disney have fallen about 41% so far this year as of Friday's close. The stock hit a 52-week low November 9th. Iger has signed on to work as CEO for 2 years, as mentioned. with a mandate from the board to set the strategic direction for renewed growth and to work closely with the board in developing a successor to lead the company at the completion of his term. The dramatic upheaval comes 11 months after Iger left the company, and days after Chapek said he planned to cut costs at the company, which had been burdened by swelling costs in its streaming service, Disney+. The company's earnings release earlier this month vastly underperformed Wall Street's expectations. Even its theme park business, which reported a surge in revenue, fell below what analysts had projected. Chapek, whose contract as CEO was re-upped earlier this year, planned a hiring freeze, cost cuts, and layoffs across the company. Iger, who held the CEO role for 15 years at Disney, had favored Chapek as his successor. The two ultimately had a falling out. The shadow of their conflict cast a shadow over the company's future. Iger is a widely respected and liked figure at Disney. He oversaw its deals to acquire Pixar, Lucasfilm, and its Star Wars properties, and Marvel, all of which have become multi-billion-dollar intellectual property behemoths. The Walt Disney Company announced that Bob Iger, taking over as CEO once again, will be the individual they turn to for creative vision and helping to right the ship. So I want to ask everybody a question here. And, I get that we all like Bob Iger, right? Most of us seem to, right? We all seem to be on the same vein as, well, anybody's better than Bob Chapek, right? However, I want to know, is bringing Bob Iger back, is that the right answer? Bringing back Bob Iger is a fascinating move, especially because he said he wasn't going to do it. But it's fascinating because this guy was done. He was tired. Should they have found someone else within the organization to lead as CEO? Should they have looked outside the organization to have found somebody to come in and take over as CEO? That's what I would like to know. Is this the right move? We are fans of Disney as a company, right? We love the organization. We love what it stands for. We love the heart of the place. And that's why we do what we do. But Bob Iger putting the company in a series of debt and potentially problematic situations for when he departed then became Bob Chapek's responsibility to handle. So knowing Bob Iger tried to set, and I'm sure it wasn't intentional that these things were all going to cascade and become Chapek's problem. I'm sure Iger thought he wanted to set people up, meaning, the Disney executives. He wanted to set people up in that company for years to come with all the intellectual property purchases of Marvel and Star Wars and everything that we've shared here. He wanted to do that because he knew that those were creative powerhouses that could allow for intellectual property to be spread everywhere and become new, under the Disney umbrella at least, become sort of new names and franchises as they move forward. Rebecca says they need to treat their employees better again. Rebecca, I could not agree more. There is a tremendous amount of distrust in Disney leadership, especially since Chapek took over. And of course, this goes back, folks, to the entire Florida debacle and everything that's been happening over the course of the last year. Chapek failed to say something at a time when everybody was looking for him to say something. Then he said something, and that led to a segment of the population being very upset about it, and him now putting himself in a position and putting Disney in the position of pissing off everybody. His inaction led to action that got a reaction that completely ruined faith and trust in the organization and lost a lot of goodwill that they had built up over the course of time. There's a revolving door of public relations executives at that time because Chapek looked like an amateur. He looked like a fool because he didn't know how to handle it. There's a government relations team within Disney Corporate that no doubt was consulting on these matters. That also became a revolving door because they failed. And the employees lost a lot of faith in the company too. So not just the consumers got pissed off and said, "What are you doing?" But the employees lost a tremendous amount of faith in the company and in the executives. There were Zoom calls full of cast members across the company that were saying to their leaders, as they tried to do damage control, these leaders doing these Zoom calls, those cast members were calling outright for Bob Chapek to step down at the time. I mean, talk about putting yourself out there, yourself at risk, right? Going on record in a company forum to say your executive, your chief executive, needs to be removed. He needs to leave. But that was what was happening. Katrina, she is here with us saying, bye, baby Bob. Yes. Junior, as we like to call him, right? Bob Jr. Bob Chapek, Bob Jr. Yes, indeed. Victor said, "You think Magical Express returns?" I think that that's over and done with. I think the contract is over and done with. I think that the concept has been thrown out, and they have removed the infrastructure of it all too. And a lot of planning, preparation, and work goes into getting those things out. When you have an entire business unit being sliced and diced and trimmed from the organization, then you watch as you have entire teams across the board that need to rally around that business unit to have it fully removed. And there are so many roots to a business product like Magical Express that needed to be removed, and now they're all gone. Not saying it's impossible. I would love to see Magical Express or something like it return, maybe a totally new program that sort of resembles Magical Express. That would be nice. However, I don't think in the short term, at least, we're going to see something like a Magical Express back again. You all remember when there was the spat, the falling out between Chapek and Iger? So this got raised here back in spring of this year. A lot of folks were thinking that there was something to the friction potential, right? There, a lot of folks were thinking that there was something to Bob Iger, Bob Chapek not liking each other, and for the longest time, it was very quiet, right? For the longest time, we didn't really hear anything other than murmurs from folks from within, sort of letting it leak that, yeah, they don't like each other. Yeah, they secretly hated each other. You hear those things about executives all the time, really high-profile executives, like, oh, yeah, no, they never got along. But then we got a story about it that dove deep and showcased exactly what was going on and just how bad it was. Let me share with you from CNBC from earlier this year this backstory that a lot of folks, I think, missed. And that is the falling out Bob Chapek and Bob Iger had just before Bob Iger's departure. I think this is something that you might appreciate hearing if you've never heard it before, because I think it sets up, to a certain degree at least, just the tone and tenor of what we've got going on right now, and certainly, I think might bring Bob Iger a bit of satisfaction. I don't know. At any rate, CNBC reported that April 12th, 2020, that's the day former Disney CEO Bob Iger's relationship with his handpicked successor, current Disney CEO Bob Chapek, began to fall apart. Iger had stunned the world in February of that year by resigning as Disney's chief executive, effective immediately. He elevated Chapek, whom Iger and the board had long seen internally as the frontrunner for the position, given his operational experience and decades at the company. Iger would stick around as executive chairman and direct the company's creative endeavors to help with the transition. The timing of a CEO change at arguably the world's most famous entertainment company couldn't have been worse. Just weeks after Iger stepped down, Disney began closing its theme parks around the world during the initial stages of the COVID-19 quarantine. Iger and Chapek seemed to be ready for the pandemic challenge together, saying, quote, "I can't think of a better person to succeed me in this role," Iger said in March of 2020 during the company's annual shareholder meeting, a day before the company announced it would begin closing its parks. Chapek returned the optimism, saying, "I've watched Bob Iger lead this company to amazing new heights, and I've learned an enormous amount from that experience," close quote. 1 month after those comments, with everyone stuck at home, then New York Times media columnist Ben Smith published a story after reaching Iger by email. He reported Iger wasn't going to turn Chapek to the wolves as a brand new CEO while the world was falling apart. Iger told Smith he would stick around to help run the company. A crisis of this magnitude and its impact on Disney would necessarily result in my actively helping Bob Chapek and the company contend with it, but particularly since I ran the company for 15 years, Iger said in his email. Chapek was furious when he saw the story. According to 3 people familiar with the matter, he had not expressed a need or desire for extra help. He wasn't looking for a white knight. Oh, how the tables have turned. Am I right, ladies and gentlemen? This is exactly the situation that is happening right now. A white knight has returned to save the day. They need help, and they called the last guy to come riding in on his white horse to save the day once again. Iger had postponed his retirement as CEO 3 times already. Chapek felt he was essentially doing it again, leaving him as a hapless second banana. Well, that's right, Junior. That's what you were, according to people familiar with his thoughts. Chapek was already reporting to Iger, the board's chairman, anyway. The Disney board had little interest in starting a brawl, especially given the state of the company and the world, the people said. 3 days after Smith's story was published, Disney accelerated its time frame and named Chapek to its board, saying, quote, "It was a turning point moment." People familiar with Chapek's reaction to Iger's interview with Smith said, "Since that last incident, Iger and Chapek haven't been able to mend their relationship," according to about a dozen people familiar with the matter who spoke with CNBC for this story, also saying that the people asked to remain anonymous because the relationship and discussions about it were private. In the months that followed, Chapek began making key decisions about Disney's future, including a dramatic reorganization of the company and outing actress Scarlett Johansson's salary following a dispute over her Marvel movie Black Widow, without Iger's input. Internal messages about business strategy from both men would sometimes conflict, as it became clear the executives weren't speaking with one voice, several people noted. While much of the public narrative has centered around Iger's long goodbye, he departed as chairman in January. Chapek, age 61, has actually been firmly in control of Disney for more than 18 months at this point. This is back in spring of this year. Normal times would have allowed Iger and Chapek to work more closely. Instead, the two executives barely spoke to each other. Chapek has a small circle of close confidants with whom he makes major decisions. Longtime right-hand man Kareem Daniel, Chief of Staff Arthur Bochner, and, to some degree, Chief Financial Officer Christine McCarthy, whom Iger promoted to the role in 2015, according to people familiar with the matter. See, Christine McCarthy, another individual in this Game of Thrones, ladies and gentlemen, that continues to be a presence that does not seem to understand the heart of the company. Christine McCarthy, I think this is great to reference, that Iger promoted her into this role as CFO. Christine McCarthy has had nasty things to say, even if she was just trying to joke. She's had nasty things to say about Disney Parks fans in particular. And on top of it, she has gone out of her way to be the foremost individual in cost-cutting, trimming, and upcharging. Now, I get it. She's the CFO, so you want her to be focused on the numbers. That's her job. But another sort of soulless executive that, when presented to the public and when in front of a camera, when in front of a crowd, comes off as somebody that couldn't care less about the heritage, history, and legacy of the Walt Disney Company. That magic that we all know and love, that magic that we all believe in, is not something that it seems she does based purely on her responses, her antics, and her enthusiasm about the company. So let's keep that in mind. Bob Iger promoted her to the CFO role. And this goes back to my question to everybody of, was Bob Iger the right choice to come back? And again, I say, anybody but Chapek? Yes. I think we're all on board with that for the most part, right? I think most of us feel that way. But was Iger truly the person that they wanted to come in and save, that is going to make the correct difference? I mean, of course, time will tell. Is he going to move all the chess pieces in the right direction this time? Is he going to be able to clean up this mess? Or is this going to potentially, I think this is a greater question, is he, Bob Iger, going to potentially tarnish his own legacy? He left kind of on a high, right? Outside of putting the company in tremendous debt on all of the IP fronts, which gets a huge pass from a lot of folks that just sort of like the guy and think that, you know, he did wonders for the organization, right? Everybody celebrates him. He walked out with a pretty well intact legacy that was sparkling. Will these final 2 years, his White Knight return, will he get blowback from this? 2 years from now, are we going to be looking back going, we thought it couldn't get any worse, my God, it did? Or do we all have faith in the guy and believe wholeheartedly that, hey, he ran it for 15 years, of course he's going to be able to clean it up. Of course his legacy is going to be even greater because he came in at the 11th hour after he retired, after he was out the door, he came back to us and he said, you deserve better. I'd love to see where the balance, right? What tips the scale? Where the balance is in 2 years. The story continues saying, late last year, just weeks before his departure as executive chairman, Iger threw himself a going-away party, inviting more than 50 people at his house in Brentwood, a suburban Los Angeles neighborhood. He spoke at length about his time at Disney in front of the crowd. Chapek attended, but there was little interaction between the two men, according to people who attended the party. Guests, including veteran Disney executives and on-camera talent such as broadcasters Robin Roberts, David Muir, and Al Michaels, sat at two long tables at Iger's house. Iger and Chapek sat at opposite tables. Chapek sat near several of his direct reports, including Daniel. Iger sat next to film director and mogul Steven Spielberg. While Iger spent about 10 minutes publicly praising former colleagues, he barely mentioned Chapek. Quote, "It was extremely awkward," said one of the guests, who asked to remain anonymous because the party was private, saying the tension was palpable. Yeah, no doubt. Chapek's decision to move away from Iger showed chutzpah, but it also put him on an island against a Disney icon, who also happened to be the chairman of his company and a large shareholder. He also hasn't been able to benefit from the myriad relationships Iger developed from decades at Disney. See, this is exactly what I was referencing a little bit earlier. You might recall me mentioning it. Relationship management, his inability, Bob Chapek that is, to nurture, foster, and underscore the relationships within this company led to his downfall. Anyone succeeding Iger, who had been Disney CEO since 2005, was going to have a difficult time filling his shoes. Iger was generally beloved by Hollywood and highly respected as a CEO, particularly after orchestrating a series of intellectual property acquisitions of Pixar, Marvel, and Lucasfilm, which will likely go down in media history as 3 of the smartest deals ever. Iger, age 71, has even flirted with running for president of the United States. Chapek, meanwhile, has a harder exterior and at times, according to colleagues, struggles with emotional intelligence, which happens to be Iger's strength. Well, there we go. Puts it right out there for you. The guy struggles with emotional intelligence. So it is quite jarring, right? To go from somebody that is very much an icon, as this story says, like Bob Iger, to a Bob Chapek, who fails in probably the most important category when it comes to leading a company that is so full of magic and heart, right? Michael Eisner, I feel like he got this very early on. When you run an organization like Disney, you need to get out in front of it. You need to be as warm, or at least an attempt to be as warm, as Walt Disney himself. You need to be somebody that is enthusiastic about your product, that is excited about what it is that you do, and loves the consumers, and puts on a show for them. Michael Eisner did that very well until probably the last few years of his tenure, in which we all mentioned, of course, he lost his mind. However, he did great and rebuilt Disney from the ground up right before it got almost sold off and stripped down. It's crazy to think that without Michael Eisner, the company wouldn't be around today. But here's Chapek, struggling with emotional intelligence, and in the shadow of somebody who is really good at it, failing to deliver on so much in terms of relationships. The story continues saying the differences between the executives' leadership styles have come to light quickly in Chapek's tenure. Disney's public spat last year with Johansson over compensation after Black Widow streamed on Disney Plus at the same time it hit theaters during the pandemic embarrassed Iger, who prided himself on smooth relationships with A-list talent. And while the controversy happened under Chapek's watch as CEO, Iger was still chairman and working with creative talent. This month, Chapek's public acknowledgement that he let Disney employees down by not fighting harder against Florida's parental rights and education legislation, of course this is back in spring of this year, has been another reminder to Iger loyalists that Disney's brand may be at risk with Chapek at the helm. Weeks before, Iger took a public stance against the legislation. The messy execution has angered Disney employees. Deadline reported it spoke with several longtime Disney employees who said Chapek's handling the situation led to the worst week they'd ever had working at the company. And several Disney employees have called Iger in recent weeks to express their disappointment in Chapek, according to 2 people familiar with the matter. And perhaps the biggest division between Chapek and Iger was a more mundane one. Chapek's decision to remove so-called profit and loss, or P&L, power from many of Disney's veteran division leaders and consolidate all of that under control of his top lieutenant, Daniel. While public controversies generate headlines, it's likely to be Chapek's internal changes and how successful they become that will determine his future as Disney's CEO. And as mentioned, we all know that he got extended out just a few months ago by the board, who voted in confidence that Bob Chapek was the guy that was going to take us into the future. And here we are today with Chapek stepping down, Bob Iger stepping back in. It is a big day in the Walt Disney Company and for Disney Parks fans as we witness the return of Bob Iger as CEO. Hollywood Reporter saying in a stunning turn of events, the Walt Disney Company says that Bob Chapek will step down as CEO with Bob Iger returning to lead the company. Disney's board of directors announced the decision tonight, Sunday night. If you are with us live, thank you so much. Hey, hit that thumbs up button, by the way. If you aren't subscribed to the channel, make sure you are. We cover all things Disney Parks news, as well as all the tips you're going to need, all of the travel plans you are going to need to hear, and we do enjoy having your presence on our channel. Make sure you are well connected with us and hit that notification bell. It means an awful lot. The reporter says that Chapek had just signed that new multi-year contract back in June, and Iger even acknowledged in an email to Disney employees Sunday that he's returning with an incredible sense of gratitude and humility. While Iger will be returning to his old role, the board also made it clear that his new term will be a temporary one. You know, they said that 3 times, that he was only going to be extended out temporarily each time as they continued to extend him on his original run as CEO. And then each time, of course, he was a kick in the can. He tried his best to present somebody else as CEO, and the board would pass each and every time. They said Iger, quote, has agreed to serve as Disney CEO for 2 years with a mandate from the board to set strategic direction for renewed growth and to work closely with the board in developing a successor to lead the company at the completion of his term. Iger stepped aside as CEO in February 2020, handing the reins over to Chapek, who previously led the company's theme parks and consumer products division. And oh, aren't we thrilled with all of the decisions he made? He continued to serve as executive chairman of the company, Iger, that is, stepping down from that position just 11 months ago. Of course, as Arnold, the chairperson of the Disney board, said in her statement, the novel coronavirus pandemic took its toll on the company, shutting its theme parks and cruise ships and stopping almost all film and TV productions. It also, however, turbocharged streaming growth, with Chapek leaning into streaming by reorganizing the company to focus on digital. But his tenure has also been rocky, marked with controversies and distractions. Quote, I am extremely optimistic for the future of this great company and thrilled to be asked by the board to return as its CEO, Iger said in a statement. Disney and its incomparable brands and franchises hold a special place in the hearts of so many people around the globe, most especially in the hearts of our employees whose dedication to this company and its mission is an inspiration. I am deeply honored to be asked to lead again in this remarkable team, with a clear mission focused on creative excellence to inspire generations through unrivaled, bold storytelling. So again, I read these stories from the different outlets for the sake of anybody joining us here about an hour into the big news that Bob Iger returning as Disney CEO. Bob Chapek is out after a seismic shift. He is gone as CEO in what might be one of the worst tenures of a Disney CEO ever. Ron Miller was pretty bad back in the 80s. We won't rehash that. It was unfortunate, to say the least. He's the guy that led Disney to near bankruptcy, so he could be considered perhaps the worst CEO of all time. However, in such a short amount of time, Bob Chapek has indeed made more enemies than he has made allies. And relationship management, at least in my view, is the main reason why Chapek and that beard, so trendy, is out the door. Folks, we asked you about whether or not you were viewing the Walt Disney Company in a more favorable light now than you did in 2019. This was a Kingdom Report viewer poll that we presented to you not too long ago. And here's what you had to say. So the question of, is your view of the Walt Disney Company more or less favorable today than it was in 2019? 81% of you said less favorable. 81% of our most rabid viewers, right? I say rabid because that's what you are as Disney fans. You are rabid Disney fans. You are invested. You are absolutely entrenched in everything that Disney does. We have some of the most sophisticated viewers and listeners anywhere, and we are grateful for each and every one of you. And we know how important the Disney product is to you. But 81% of you said your view of the Disney company was less favorable today than it was in 2019. That is a tremendous vow of frustration and no confidence to where Disney is headed. 13% of you said about the same, 6% of you said more favorable. I'd love to talk to the folks that voted more favorable. I'd really love to know exactly why they said that. Why they view things better today. Why the Walt Disney Company is better off today. Why they think the Walt Disney Company is a better example today than it was in 2019. Right? And we said 2019 because we wanted to put that before the pandemic chaos, which, it's not really fair to ask this question about 2020, 2021. But today, where we're sort of on the other side of the heat of all of it, and almost every single operational structure within the Disney company has come back online to 100%, we wanted to ask that question. And 81% of you, in a staggering amount, said less favorable. I get it. And now finally, the Disney board gets it too. Something had to give. Something finally had to break. Sadly, it always has to take a financial decline for a board of directors anywhere, really, to do something, to act. But this was a very quick tenure for Bob Chapek. And these numbers from rabid Disney fans should be a testament to the Disney board of exactly where things were heading. I'm just glad that they did something. That action finally happened. Because here we are, standing today with Bob Chapek out as Disney CEO. Removed as Disney CEO. And we are looking to the future with 2 more years of Disney incoming CEO and former Chief Executive, former Chairman, Bob Iger taking over. As he joins us once again as the CEO of the company. So now we ask, what do you think the future of Disney will look like? At this point, what will it look like now? This company is gigantic in scope and size. Do you think that there is just going to be an easy sort of righting of the ship? Do you think that there's going to be a lot of quick things done to help rectify the consumer confidence issue that's going on? Right? Because there is none. Shareholder confidence, all-time low. Employee morale, all-time low. Do you think there's going to be a lot of quick fixes here? A lot of smaller things that are going to be done to show a gesture of goodwill by Bob Iger? Or do you think that potentially this is going to take a lot longer because so much damage has been done? Where do you see the Disney company at the moment? And how do you imagine Disney will look in the near future? With Bob Iger taking over one more time as part of an extension, we would love to hear from you. All right, my friends. I want you to stick around. There is plenty more Disney News Talk Live on this historic day with Bob Chapek being removed as Disney CEO. Bob Iger returning for 2 more years to help right the ship when we come back.
Wanna see it? Go on in. Holy smokes, Roger! We've been there!
Respond to dip, boys. Well done.
Hey! Let go of me, idiot!
Disney News Talk Live. So glad you could be a part of this impromptu broadcast here on Sunday night, November 20th, as we embark on a holiday week where typically there is very little news to report on, where typically there is very little to share, and oftentimes Disney doesn't put out a whole lot just in terms of news and notes. Everybody goes on vacation, including us, and we often don't have much to talk about on a week like this. However, huge seismic activity from the Walt Disney Company as we have learned that the Disney Board of Directors has now removed Bob Chapek as Disney CEO. In comes Bob Iger to replace Bob Chapek. Yeah, the last guy is now here to replace him. He's going to be with us for 2 years, and one of his mandates is that he has to present somebody to take his place within 2 years' time. So we asked you just before the break, what's the future going to look like now? With Bob Iger back at the helm, so much sort of PR damage done to the company, and no doubt a lot of problems when it comes to finances, substantial issues when it comes to relationships that have been stomped on, severed, just completely. We'll just call it burned to the ground. Okay, let's call it what it is. Will Bob Iger be able to resurrect the company quickly? Louis says, hopefully changes come quickly, especially the reservations. Had to cancel our Christmas Disney vacation and move it to January due to no reservations available. Louis, that's unfortunate. I'm so sorry to hear that. I know that that is a problem for a lot of folks at the moment. I continue to see it and lots of chatter around it, rather. I get it. It's a problem, and reservations, I don't think, are going anywhere, even under the Iger administration. It's something they love having. It's a control tactic that gives them tremendous visibility to everything that's going on parks-wise. So it's now a tool that they are only going to continue using. So that sucks that you had to cancel that Christmas Disney vacation. But hey, you know what? Typically January, a lot quieter. So you got that going for you. I wish you all the magic on your trip. Tyler is back in chat saying, Iger is back, like it or not. Yeah, we don't really have a choice in this matter. I think I mentioned here 50 or so times. It's nice to have the option of somebody again, rather than the JPEG era, because it was pretty dark. I talk about the relationships that have been severed and how relationship management really, I think, is instrumental to the downfall of Bob Chapek, and just how poorly he managed all of those relationships over the course of his tenure, especially as the foremost leader of the company. He just kind of ruined I don't know. He just kind of ruined the taste in people's mouths. Like, he ruined the emotional connection folks had to the brand because of, I don't know if it was arrogance or maybe it is just what CNBC reported, and that's just a lack of emotional intelligence. He's just not good at it. So yeah, to be the CEO of this company, Disney, that's not a good place for you to be if you lack emotional intelligence. Maybe I don't know, maybe there's another company better suited for you out there. G says, honestly, I've been to Disneyland over 100 times and I went in October and it was such a terrible trip. I've had no interest in, I've had no interest to ever return again until now. Well, G, hopefully we will see some small changes happen, as I mentioned before the break, going that direction, potentially of resurrecting aspects of the parks and perhaps getting rid of some of the upcharges and bringing back some of the things that have been eliminated in the last year. Hopefully, those are things that can happen quickly. Hopefully, those are things that can be easily employed and not be too far removed, like maybe Magical Express being too far removed. Maybe bringing something like that back would be very helpful, out at Walt Disney World specifically. But I think it'll take time, G. It probably won't be an overnight fix. It'll probably be at least a couple months before Iger gets his fingerprints on things one more time. But I'm sorry to hear that you've been having such a terrible experience at Disneyland. It's still a magical place and still filled with a lot of folks that work there who believe in it and who love it. And who try to extend that same hospitality, but I get it. I've also seen some of the newer cast members that are just there to fill a position and don't really care about the legacy and don't necessarily have much of an emotional connection to the brand themselves. So those things do add up over the course of time. The Disney Stranger says, "How many happy dancers tonight?" Yeah, no, there's. We've been seeing it in the comments left and right. Lots of happy dancers out there with Bob Iger returning to his role as CEO, replacing Bob Chapek after less than 11 months of being retired. Bob Iger is back. Disney Stranger saying, ABC, anyone but Chapek. Yeah, okay. Jen says, I didn't think Disney could have ever turned me off, but under Chapek, I started to be. Didn't even renew my annual pass when I could. Jen, I've heard this from people that they have been so pushed away as though they are not feeling valued anymore. And I get that. I feel it too. Believe me, I feel it. But I continue to hear that from the Disney fan community and people who are putting, their money where their mouth is. Folks like you, Jen, didn't even renew your annual pass. I mean, that is, I think, a tremendous testament to your frustration and your anger. Yeah, I don't want to put words in your mouth that you didn't say you were angry. You just basically said you were disappointed. You're turned off. But I think that's a tremendous testament to a Disney fan like you going, you know what? It's not even worth renewing my annual pass. I don't even feel valued anymore. So sad to think that we're at that point, right? That we are at this point where we're not even going to renew if we have an opportunity. Just forget it. I don't even want to go. Hopefully, the Iger administration part 2 will help change things. Somebody who does not think things will change, Alan, saying, I doubt he will change it. Thank you, Alan. Lucy said, I wonder if Iger knew what type of person McCarthy is. If so, shame on him. Of course, referring to Christine McCarthy, the CFO, as we mentioned in that story here just a few minutes ago, was promoted to the position of CFO by Bob Iger a couple years ago. And she has just been, she's sort of the female equivalent of Bob Chapek. That's my specific perspective, okay? That is my specific perspective on the matter, is that she is a female Chapek. She has a disdain for the consumer base the way in which I have seen the disdain from Bob Chapek. And I hope that Iger, a CFO position is a critical critical executive in any company, especially the biggest media company in the world, Lucy. And so to know that Iger promoted her, if he didn't do his due diligence in figuring out what type of person McCarthy was, uh, you're right. Shame on him. You said it. It's shame on him. Quentin says probably less than 5% chance there's a Tiana splash in land and a Briar Patch at World. I don't know about that. I think that money was spent, Quentin, as a matter of fact. So I believe that is a. I mean, I think we're just a couple months away from that being something that gets commenced, as a matter of fact. So I know there's a lot of diehard Splash Mountain fans out here that love the original, but the Tiana Princess and the Frog re-theme, I think, is definitely still on track. I don't imagine that project's going to get canceled because I think we are right on the cusp of the shutdowns happening. I believe that probably January or so, Splash goes down for its annual refurb in both parks, and I think that Disneyland side, especially, I think we're about to see, the overhaul. So I think that's where we're going. Disney Grandma says, can he turn it around in 2 years is my question. I agree, Disney Grandma. I said this here a second ago, right? It's one of those things where he's coming into a really, Bob Iger that is, he's coming into a really unfortunate situation filled with potholes, right? The Disney road is filled with potholes now. Can he fill all these potholes in 2 years? Can he get the magic back, as we all keep saying? Can he reinstate that magic quickly? And can he do it in 2 years? Disney Stranger saying, could not get any worse. The only way is up. Yeah. That's a good point. Jerry says, they should bring in Abigail Disney. I'm sure she can point the parks in the right directions. She has the Walt Disney blood, and I'm sure she would succeed. Jerry, Abigail has been a fascinating figure in the last couple years. One of the, and I think it's a good point, Jerry, that none of the Disney namesakes are involved in the company anymore. And that was something that really concerned me after Roy passed away. There was never a Disney namesake in the company again, Roy Jr., that is. And knowing that there wasn't a Disney family member instrumental in how things were going to be operating and sort of being that presence of, the legacy of the blood, it always worried me because when you have an heir in the company, it's personal to them and you don't want to mess up. You don't want to foul up, right? You don't want to trip in front of the heir because you're going to look stupid and they will have all the goodwill. They will have all of the, crowds and consumers and the people that love the brand on their side. If you screw up, all they have to do is turn to that crowd and say, hey, everybody, grab your pitchforks and torches and let's go for this person. And it's done. But Abigail is one of those people that, as vocal as she's been about Disney, and let's be precise what she's been vocal about, mainly pay inequity is what she's talked about. Mainly Disney's inability to pay cast members, employees, especially frontline workers, the living wage that they deserve. She has been beating that drum for years, and I don't disagree. Disney workers, especially having been a part of Disney for over a decade myself, I can tell you firsthand, you don't work there to get paid well. Unless you are a vice president, director, even myself in senior management. I mean, you don't go there to get paid. You're not walking away with big, hefty pockets full of cash. That's just not the way Disney works. And unfortunately, the very front line of the company gets paid pennies. I mean, it's really unfortunate. With all the price increases, with all the upcharges, with all the things that have been happening over the last 2 years, the frontline workers, while there has been a raise here and there, it's been nothing substantial to a degree that can help, especially now knowing of just how insane inflation has become. Certainly not keeping up with that. But Abigail has mainly beat the drum of pay inequity, pointing specifically at Disney executives, saying people like the CEO, oh, he makes, I don't even know what she says, 800 times more or whatever it is than the frontline worker. She always has her talking points. She always has her, her key talking points that she likes to run with. And I'm glad that she's out there saying it, but she's also somebody that does not appear to, she's big on the mic. She's not big on the action. That's been my view of Abigail this whole time, is she does very little in terms of making mountains move. And she does more of the whining, complaining. She's like Twitter is what she is. She screams out into the universe. She complains, she whines, she's angry, she's upset all the time. She blames everybody else for everything. She doesn't have any real solutions. But you're at least glad she's talking about it, right? So it's entertaining to listen to sometimes. So again, I'm glad that she's out there beating the very important drum of the pay inequity throughout the company, because it is substantial and it continues to be a problem. But she's not doing anything to change it. And I don't get the impression that her sitting on her millions, probably tens, hundreds of millions, in inheritance, I don't get the impression that she wants to be active in the organization. I don't really think she wants to work. I don't really think she wants to be doing these things. I think she wants to do creative things that she's interested in. I think she wants to be involved in projects that she's responsible for that might not be associated with Disney in the slightest, because that's kind of what she does. She does her own thing when she wants to do her own thing. And when you're a multimillionaire, that's what you can do. When you're an heir to the Disney fortune, you can do what you want. But Abigail does not seem to want to work, or be a part of the company in that way. But she is calling out the pay inequity. Zepp saying, the big man is back, thank goodness. Yeah, Zepp, he is on his way. Worl Omar saying, Chapek was good for the COVID crisis and keep the company afloat, but now it's time for Iger again. Well, I mean, is it time for Iger? Or is it time for just somebody else entirely? I also don't want Iger to burn out. The poor guy's been doing this for 15 plus years, and he finally had, time for a break, time to retire. He's in his early 70s. It's time to relax, and now he's back. So, but I agree. It's time for a change. That's for sure. Whether or not it should have been Iger, I guess there was nobody else, that existed. Nobody else that could do it. I did see somebody mention the other day. I don't know if it was a comment on a video or sent directly to me, but one of you sent to me, it'd be great to see Michael Eisner return for a 3-year contract at this point, just to come in, bridge the gap, because of so much of what he knows now and where he knows he failed and how he knows, in which he, to navigate, if you will, in which he knows how to navigate the system and the organization as a whole. It would be good to see him back, somebody had mentioned. And I thought, well, I believe, at this point, I think he's in his 80s, isn't he? Like we're talking about a guy that, he's had some great successful investments, certainly nowhere near the level of success as Disney CEO since he's left. But I sure don't think, he had a heart attack while he was CEO, and he was decades younger at that point. And so I don't know if it would be good for his health for him to come back, but yeah, certainly time for a change. Jack saying, how about getting rid of the reservation system that every other theme park discontinued? Like I said, Jax, they are not going to get rid of this reservation system. This bad boy is here to stay. They have said it as much, and they've also made it very clear that it's a control tool that just provides them too much of a benefit. So Phil says, good. I would imagine good to the news that Bob Iger is back. I think that's what you're saying. Lucy saying, I certainly hope that my excitement that Iger is back doesn't turn out to be sorrow. You and me both, Lucy. As mentioned, I feel like there's a potential for him to tarnish his legacy, his sterling reputation that he had on the way out the last time. This could all blow up in his face. He's coming back as the White Knight, but that might not last long. So I appreciate you mentioning that. Javier says, so they can't fire that guy named Bob Chapek at all, and Bob Iger no longer come back at all, since the world must be consumed by the COVID-19 pandemic for over 3 years. So I think I get what you're saying here, Javier. You know what? COVID-19 and the issues that the company was facing, I guess now about a year and a half ago, during the heat of it all, the company is back to 100% capacity for the most part. They're operating on all levels the way they were prior to the COVID-19 pandemic shutdown and have been now most of the year. So using that as cover for the problems that are going on, for the things that are happening, cover for Bob Chapek. There was cover for a little bit, and I completely agree. It impacted things in a tremendous way, and no doubt shook the foundation of the company, shook the foundation of investors, and all of the executives. So there was cover, right? We gave them some slack, but now, no, that's an old excuse, not working. God bless America, Dan. And Joanna's Big Adventure says, I hope Iger has learned to keep Disney World out of politics. I think it'll be very interesting to see what happens with him taking over um, the reins now, just knowing how close we are to the Reedy Creek Improvement District being stripped away. There's an opportunity here for it to still be intact. There's an opportunity for the governance of Walt Disney World to still be in control potentially. However, with how Florida performed here in the most recent election, and now there's a super majority of the party that sort of went after Disney here in, I guess that was spring of this year. Boy, this year feels like it's been going on forever, hasn't it? At the same time, it feels like it's gone by in just a blip. But yeah, I think that Bob Iger will work his magic. I think he's gonna charm to a certain degree the politicians. I think that's what he's going to do. I think this is going to be priority number one, because no doubt this was probably second strike losing Reedy Creek Improvement District. I think this was second strike for Chapek. So I think Iger can woo them and charm them, and hopefully figure out a way that Disney can still keep control, because I believe that there's still an opportunity because it doesn't go into effect for an entire year, basically, where Reedy Creek does not get stripped away from Disney World for an entire year. So I think that Iger will use that time to swoop in and charm the pants off of these folks, and hopefully be able to keep Reedy Creek within Disney's own control. However, Iger himself is very outspoken when it comes to political matters that he feels passionate about. In fact, he spoke out before Bob Chapek spoke out when it came to the Florida matter and the parental rights and education bill earlier this year. So I don't recall Bob being so overtly, leading the company and getting the company out in front of issues as much. That's for sure. But I know he did it. And I do know that statements were released, but nobody made a big deal about it for some reason. So it did happen. It just was not, I guess, a big deal. So it does exist under an Iger administration, him getting Disney, in and around politics. I remember a couple years ago, Atlanta and Georgia, and sort of the epicenter of Georgia being, surrounding a big political situation, and all the companies were swearing that they were no longer going to film there. Disney was one that said, we are pulling out, did a big statement of the Iger administration. Disney still films there. They didn't leave. They said it, and that was the Iger administration. They put that statement out that they were not going anywhere, or that they were rather the opposite, that they were out of there, and they ended up not going anywhere. Is what I was trying to say. So we will see. Hopefully, Iger just seems to be able to navigate these waters a lot better, and I think it goes back to the relationship management piece. I really do. He knows how to charm, and it makes a big difference. Tyler says, give Wade a big thumbs up, friends. Tyler, I'm going to give you a big thumbs up right now. That's the way I feel. Thanks. Johnny said, wow, awesome. I thought you guys were joking. I know faithful Disney fans boycotting Disney because of Chapek. Johnny, I thought it was a joke too at first. I thought it was like, I guess the Babylon Bee, just got back on Twitter, and I thought it was like one of those stories. It was a spoof publication or something when I first came across it. And I was like, wait a minute. No, this is Deadline Hollywood. Wait a minute. And so I started checking, 3-4 other sources, and all of them were just screaming from the mountaintop, oh my God, Bob Iger's back. So yeah, you're as shocked as I am. Jeremy said, hey, Wade, thanks for the live feed on this event. Jeremy, this is some of the biggest Disney news of the year, perhaps the 2020s. So we had to be here, and we definitely had to jump in. We want to thank you for being here as well as everybody else. Hey, by the way, folks, you haven't hit that thumbs up button. What the heck are you waiting for? Do it. Do it, please. Thumbs up as well as subscribe helps a great deal. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, make sure you are locked in with that notification bell turned on so you never miss a thing. And Jeremy, we appreciate you for being here. Jason saying, thank you, Wade. You are welcome, Jason. Nas saying, bye-bye, Chapek. Yes, goodbye indeed, Chapek. That's for sure. Disney Stranger saying, Ron Miller was not all that bad. He did lead the way for 80s. Is that Eisner? Is that what you meant to write? Yeah, he did. I know that there was a great family feel still to the Disney company when Ron Miller was CEO. And unfortunately, though, it just was not a company that was performing and was stumbling all over the place, and was probably on the eve of being raided and sold off. So could you imagine not having a Disney company at all today? BV saying, ding, ding, paycheck. Paycheck is dead. So I think you mean ding dong, paycheck is dead. We don't mean that literally, of course. Carlos saying, can we please get the magic back? Amen, Carlos. Lucy saying that percentage speaks volumes, of course, referring to the poll that we took. 81% of folks saying they view the Disney company less favorable now than they did in 2019. Jennifer saying, yay, I am jumping for joy at the news of Bob Iger's return. Jennifer, it is great to have that change in effect. Amen. Goofy saying, everybody says paychecks, right? Bob Paycheck's gone. Well, Goofy, thanks for dropping in. We love you, Goof. Even Goofy's excited. Dwayne says, the board only gets it because Disney is hemorrhaging money on Disney+. Dwayne, I think it's a snowball effect, really. I think that there were strikes that were happening throughout all of the paycheck tenure. I'll call him that from now on. All of Chapek's tenure. I think that that's what was happening. And there were all of these sort of, big strike moments, strike one, strike two. And I think that this may have been the final strike. These very unfortunate numbers, to say the least. So, Dwayne, thank you for that. All right. Well, I'm sorry. I'm looking at the news stories that continue to be pumped out over this, and just how everybody's jockeying for position and jockeying for all of these opinions on the matter. And so I'm looking out and taking a look. I'm looking out at all of the opinions on what's happening with Chapek, and whether or not he's even made a statement, and he hasn't. That's really what I'm trying to search for here. Is okay. There are lots of opinions on the matter, but where's Chapek? I think Chapek is going to be gone for the foreseeable future, just like in the dark. I think he's going to be quiet. I think he's going to be up and out, and sort of in the shadows for a while. Because when you sort of leave in disgrace a major company like this, you're not exactly hireable right away. It's going to take some time for people to forget about you a little bit, and hopefully, we will see. Hopefully, we will see. Him resurface, get back on his feet. Perhaps at Taco Bell. I don't know. He deserves it, right? He deserves to make a living just like anybody else. Speaking of making that living, Lucy says, amazing that the disdain of the consumer from both Chapek and McCarthy paid their ginormous salaries. Amen, sister. Absolutely. Evan says, good morning. Is it morning where you are, Evan? Well, good morning to you. Glad you could join us on this special edition of Disney News Talk Live. All right. Disney Grandma says, even with all the price hikes, I would go if they bring the magic back. I'm a big Disney fan, and I know, hey, your name's Disney Grandma, so I'm a big Disney fan, and I know that I know what the magic is in my heart, and I need to see that come back. And hopefully Bob can do it. Yeah, hopefully he can. Iger, that is. Bob Iger. Jeremy says, when you focus on the shareholders and not the workers, eventually the bottom of the pyramid will collapse. Again, a strike, right? I think this is another strike in the House of Cards when it comes to Chapek's tenure. Absolutely. It's been a morale crumbling experience, the Chapek administration. Jason says, don't want to pay Disney employees what it's worth and want to cheapen the company. That's exactly what happened. Henry saying, did we get our Christmas present early or what? Henry, I know so many people feel right now with the news of Bob Iger returning as CEO, Bob Chapek stepping down. Sam Rodriguez, we want to thank you for your super chat. Keep up the good work, Wade and crew. Sam, that means so much. Thanks for being a VIP. Roger says, Bob Iger is back. My mind got blown away. I hope he gets better soon. I think you mean that he gets the company better soon? Yeah, me too. I think Bob Iger's in great health. Steve Valkenberg says, sad thing, I think Chapek will be paid 3 years' salary. Probably worth paying to get rid of him. Good point, Steve. I think you might be right. He has a 3-year contract, and I know that most executives have the pay or play clause in their contracts where they can pay you for not doing anything and putting you on the sidelines, or they can play you and put you in, coach, and make you work. Perhaps that's a clause, or he is just going to be kicked the rest of the salary before he's gone. And well, he's gone. What am I saying? He's going to be kicked the rest of the salary on over so that he can have a nice. He just bought that new house in L.A. Everybody remember the big beautiful white home on the hill? He did buy that new house, so he probably needs some cars to fill his garage with. So 3 years salary should deal quite nicely with that. So I think you're right, Steve. He probably is getting his 3-year contract salary. Johnny says, you guys need to do an on-air party, LOL. Johnny, here's the thing. This Saturday, the 26th, right, Thanksgiving weekend, join us for Kingdom Report Live. We will all be together, and this will be story number 1. This will be the first thing that we all talk about when we come together as a team once again. Myself, Tyler Crouch, Katrina Manzoni, Garrett Hassel, all coming together to talk about this very story, and who knows what will happen between now and this coming Saturday. It is going to be a big story to start with because I think it is the biggest story of the year, if not the decade. Like I said, the 2020s, especially when it comes to Disney. So we will absolutely go all in on this in terms of an on-air party, and we will be celebrating and at least discussing the matter this Saturday on Kingdom Report Live, 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Pacific. Don't miss our live studio show this Saturday. It is, like I said, Thanksgiving weekend. So what else you got to do, huh? Yeah, you've already watched the parade. Sit down with the family, watch Kingdom Report Live this coming Saturday. All right. Taking a look at a couple more comments here, and then we will skedaddle. If you're just joining us by chance, yes, Bob Iger is returning as Disney CEO, replacing Bob Chapek. After Iger has only been retired for 11 months, the board of directors has brought back Iger as CEO for the next 2 years to help stabilize and present somebody else to take the CEO spot. Chocolate saying, "This is huge." It is indeed. Scott saying, "This is the best news I've heard all day." Scott, this is the best news I think we've heard in the last 2 years. And Chris says, "No one actually knows what is happening internally. They just released a public note for now." Exactly. Yeah. Nobody's really sure exactly what's happening, especially at the top and the board of directors, those sorts of things. So, hoping to have more information before we join you for Kingdom Report Live this Saturday. And maybe we'll be able to add even more context to this monumental announcement. Laurie Jean says, "Bob Chapek or Paycheck is evil." I don't know if he's evil. I think he's just a stone cold businessman with a very flashy beard. Happy Hour says, "With Iger back in, attractions will now only take 4 years to complete." Zing. Outback Cat says, "Iger started the rot. This is not a win." Outback, here's the thing, and we've covered in great detail so far on this broadcast. I'm very much in the camp of, yes, Iger made some mistakes along the way and put the company in an unfortunate situation where the debt piled up, and certainly Chapek had to play the game of figuring out how to deal with it all. However, I think that from a PR standpoint, this is the best thing that can happen right now. And the goodwill and trust in the Disney brand is something that I think everybody is looking to have restored. And it's not going to happen with Bob. I keep wanting to call him Paycheck now. Bob Chapek. All right. Lori Jean says, "Happy holidays." Wade in the Kingdom Report. Happy holidays to you, Lori Jean. It's great to be with you. And William says, "Hopefully Bob will make it affordable again." Yeah, no, I'd like to see that. It would be nice. All right. Well, folks, this has been a tremendous night to be able to not just be with you, but to be able to share this news together, to be able to talk about these things, that Bob Iger is returning as Disney CEO and replacing Bob Chapek. The Chapek administration crumbles once and for all. Bob Iger returning to the throne. And let's not forget, when you think of emotional intelligence, I mean, don't you think of this?
Bob. So good. How are you doing?
Hello, hello. Hi, nice to meet you. Hi.
How are you?
Good, thank you. How are you?
All right, guys.
Bye, thank you.
I mean, right? Nothing better than that interaction, that's for sure. I think in closing, better than knowing that Bob Chapek is departing and is gone. I keep saying it like it's going to happen. It's happened. Better than knowing that he's gone is knowing that there are hundreds of thousands of Disney employees worldwide who are going to be able to feel good about coming to work again, who are going to be able to feel confident that they're going to have a job in the near future, and who are going to be excited about creating magic again while not having to worry so much about what that guy at the top is going to do next, or how he's going to wreck, ruin, or potentially destroy their future or their love of the organization, because that's what was happening. The lowest morale in a generation at the Disney company. That is inexcusable. And if there was one thing Bob Iger was good at, it was making sure people felt respected and appreciated, and that everybody knew they contributed to something great. Bob Chapek, after several years at the helm, was not capable of doing such a thing. And that, to me, is more important than the news itself. It's knowing that finally action has taken place and we can see the fruits of the labor once again from the people that work there who love what it stands for. Congratulations, cast members. It looks like support is coming back. Appreciation is on its way once again, and you are about to be taken care of. So good luck to you as we move into the Thanksgiving holiday, and thank you for being a part of Disney News Talk Live. Again, joining us this Saturday, please, if you will, to see us all live in our studio together. Tyler Crouch, Katrina Manzoni, Garrett Hassel, and myself as we come together. You see our ugly mugs. Sorry, just my ugly mug. Everybody else has very beautiful mugs. And we can talk about this story even more in depth and get everybody's opinions on the matter, everybody's perspective on this news. Bob Chapek replaced by Bob Iger, returning as Disney CEO for the next 2 years. You have yourself a wonderful Thanksgiving, and thanks for stopping by on a Sunday night. We'll see you next time for another installment of Disney News Talk